Hey guys, welcome back to Henry's Technical Tutoring for the next video in the Web Browsing Safely series. So in this video, we're going to continue our review of the E2Guardian man-in-the-middle SSL proxy service by looking at the filtering options and how we can further tune E2Guardian's behavior to better suit your needs. Let's start by reviewing the E2Guardian F1 config file. This contains all the references to the different rule files, and we'll just go over a few of the important ones to look at. This is the location and the file name. So the first section to check out is the content filtering files location. This contains banned phrase lists, which any phrase matched in a website contents that is listed here is going to just result in that site being banned. The weighted phrase list is a little similar, but now every word has a score, be it a positive score for bad or a actual negative score for good. And then later on in the file, you'll see a limitation that's implemented that states what level a site has to cross before it's blocked. By default, it's a value of 50. The exception phrase list contains any phrases that if they're present, the site will be allowed through by default. That's this one here. The next section you're going to notice is the banned lists. This contains lists that can either be a domain, an IP address, or a URL. And it also has the option to do regex-based banning, which can be dangerous. It can be very easy to have a false positive. And you can also ban based on the user agent. There's also these two here where you can ban by domain or by IP address sites that are SSL, so HTTPS sites, while still allowing the HTTP equivalent to work. I'm not sure what application you'd have for that, but maybe one exists. Gray listing works in conjunction with the actual banned site lists. So if a site is listed in here in one of these banned lists, you can actually gray list it over here, which basically will allow the site to still come through, but it will still run the site against the content checking process in here to see if any phrases exist that are deemed as being bad. Next one is the exception lists. So this contains exceptions that work very similar to gray listing, except they don't check the phrases for being present. If a site is put in the exception list, you're guaranteed it's going to be, visible to your clients. So one thing to note, these banned lists and other lists here are not populated by default. If you want to put content in there, I would recommend looking at online blacklists that you can download automatically and then include with E2Guardian using some kind of a scripted process to do daily updates, for instance. I won't be doing that in this series because we'll be utilizing the Pi-hole project to perform that kind of action and sort of implementing it in conjunction with this. So the next thing to check out is the regex replacement lists, and I'll show you an example of this particular one. You can actually go in and you can force things like Google's safe search option. So if someone visits the actual Google search site, then they'll be forced over to the safe search version. But this is transparent. They won't see the change. They won't see their URL adjust because E2Guardian is going out to the server for them and bringing the information back. They're not going to see that. The same thing with YouTube's restricted mode. You can force YouTube to operate only in the restricted mode. And of course, you can create your own options here to replace things. And as you can see, it's using regex for its matching. So that's quite useful. There's also a content replacement list option where you can actually do your own little changes. I did some censoring in here already, but you can maybe replace certain words with a censored line, or you can, if you maybe don't like certain HTML elements, you can remove those. Like you can disable Java pop-ups, for instance, or you can turn off ActiveX. You can, if you really dislike these blink and marquee tags, not that you see those very often anymore, you can just remove them so they won't cause any horrible things from being displayed. So that's another little nifty feature that E2Guardian offers. There's also local lists, which I don't think you'll really be using unless you're doing automatic updates to these and you want to have your own separate local lists that don't get interfered with against I guess those actual other lists basically. So just more more of the same thing, banned, gray listing, and also exception listing. Next thing to check out here is the file extension lists. So by default, you will see there's a bunch of different extension types that are getting blocked. And you may want to tune this to your needs, or maybe even turn it off entirely, depending on what you want to, what you want to achieve with this project. And there's also a MIME type block, where you can block certain MIME types from being, accessed by users. And to go with both of these, there's exception lists. So you can, for instance, exempt a bunch of sites, like by default the Windows Update sites are exempt so that the other blocks there don't interfere, like the extension blocks don't cause troubles. So that's some useful stuff there. If you're implementing this for the first time, there is also a way, and you're using the banned site listings, there's a way you can actually, instead of just going right into the banned sites, you can maybe put the domains, IPs, and URLs you want to block, or even regex matches you want to make, into this logging entry option. And what this will do is it will log the fact the site was banned, but won't actually ban it. So this can let you sort of go through like a grace period where you begin to analyze the patterns of your users and see what would be blocked, and verify if anything that would have been blocked is like a legit service that they need to access, and then you can react accordingly and tune the filters to not do that, basically. So beyond this, let's scan through here. There's the naughtiness limit. This is the threshold I spoke of earlier. This sets the value as to which, after a certain score, a site is blocked. So anything above, by the default 50, will be blocked out. Further on, we can see that there is actually a number of options here. There's some stuff here for bypassing. So you'll see in the E2Guardian block page, there's an acknowledge option. You can allow users to acknowledge that the page was blocked and still proceed through. That might be useful in a corporate setting, or if you're implementing this in a small business perhaps, and you want the users to be able to make the decision of, oh, that was blocked, but I need to get there, I'll acknowledge it, and I can then follow up with the admin later to say, hey, can you make sure that this site isn't blocked in the future? So that can sort of, help make a transition to using this service a bit more easy for everyone. So at the very end, though, of this file, you'll see there's also a man-in-the-middle check cert function that defaults to on. And this will verify if the certificate of the remote site is valid or not. If it's not valid, it won't be loaded. You can bypass this if you have maybe a need to do so. You can enter in domains or IP addresses into these files, and that will allow certain websites to still come through if their certificates are not valid. So let's go back up to the top, though, here. We're first going to check out the section for the banned phrase list. So if we edit this file here in banned phrases, and we can come in here and we can add our own phrases here. There is also, of course, includes, so maybe there are certain things you want to have by default. There's one important category that you probably want to have, and you can check this out, see what's in there for yourself, and again, any phrase that is matched in either of these included files or anything else you add here will be banned. So what we can do is we can actually add a phrase right in here. Let's say that we have children and the children are not allowed to watch a certain cartoon. We could say, come in here and ban this particular cartoon, Peppa Pig. And if we go into our search engine right now and just search for that, oops. Yes, thank you, helpers. Peppa Pig, we should get results, and we do. Now, if we come in and we save that change, and we restart the E2Guardian service, I have a script doing that for me up here, but you want to make sure whenever you change a file in E2Guardian that you restart it. Otherwise, your change won't take effect. And we perform the search again, we'll get banned. And here's where we see there's this acknowledge link that, in my case, won't do anything, but maybe you want to set it up so it does. And we'll also get a category information. There's no category, but it was in the banned phrase found, section. So we can come back here, and this is very binary, so we can undo our change. And if we refresh again, it should come back, and we get results once again. All right, so next thing we're going to have a look at is the weighted phrase matching. So we'll open up the weighted phrase list file. Now by default, I commented some of these out. So this is there by default for news. And also a lot of the entries in this category here are present. However, I did notice that in some cases for some of my normal searches, the fact that these other languages for the pornography category were present was causing me issues. So you may want to adjust this accordingly to your needs and to what you're seeing being blocked and what you're seeing being allowed. This particular entry here is for good phrases, so all of these files are supposed to contain good phrases that will all have negative scores that will offset the score of a website. So if you look up here in this little window here I've got going, there is log output logging just the Google searches that are being performed here. This is actually the output of var log E2Guardian access.log, and you can see in here that there is, at the very end of this line, there's a one, no name group, a blank field, and then this field. This is the score. That's the weighted score of that search. So you can see above it was banned for a phrase being found for Peppa Pig, but the score was still the same as it was, we weren't doing anything with actual weighting. What we'll do in here is, before I continue, there are other sections that are turned on by default. You can come in and decide to enable or disable these as you see fit. I will note that this is a bit of an older application, so don't just say, oh, I'm going to ban all chat, and you uncomment this and think all chat's taken care of. Anything that's more recent may not be present in the default options here, so you'll want to look at some of these when you're turning them on to make sure that they contain strings that you deem to be a complete set of what you want banned. I can probably guarantee you that things like TikTok aren't in here, so just be aware of that. Same for say Google Hangouts, it's not in there. Webmail doesn't have Gmail in there, so make sure you do your homework and look at what you're enabling and that it is complete to your liking before you just do it blindly and hope for the best, especially if this is going to be for a corporate environment. So there's other stuff here. They're turned on by default, like some security stuff, miscellaneous lists, productivity things you can turn on and off as you see fit. And at the top though, what we can do is we can come in and we can say, let's say there's a different cartoon that we don't like, but we want to ban it based on the phrase listing. We can come in and say Callaloo, which is a cartoon that some parents despise, and we can assign it an arbitrary value of 500, and then we can save our changes. Now if we go back to our search engine and we do a search instead for Callaloo, we should get blocked, and we do. It's blocked. Category is blocked by content checking, so that's actual content block this time. And if we look at our log, we'll notice that we have a denied message here. This is the entirety of the message. But in the message, we have two fields that give us the score. At the very end here, we have the score, and we also have it repeated over here after the denied content check limit of 50, I guess, was reached. And instead we saw 1063. So depending on what we put in here, we're going to see different results there. If we were to comment out the weighted general entry for the good phrases and save that change and re-perform our search and look at our log entry, we'll see likely a different score. So previously we had a score of 1063. This time we had a score of 1913. So you can see that the good phrases list will do a lot to impact your score. So I would recommend that you also check that phrase list out and see if you want to, leave it in place or adjust it. Probably in most cases, the default should be fine. I did do a few changes to mine that I'll highlight for you though, just so you're aware. So if I just grab for any lines that start with a comment in that file, you can see I commented out a couple of them: transparent, X-rated, and IMDb. I found that these were influencing the search results, so I was getting a bit too much, and so I, commented those out. Now, this was just to impact my search results on Google. It depends on, again, your application. Maybe you want to have actual search result pages getting banned because of what's in there. Maybe you don't mind as much. Maybe you just care about when the user goes to the site. If people are going to certain questionable sites, like pornographic sites, it's almost guaranteed to block them, because the amount of wording that will match and give a positive score towards the block threshold being hit is going to vastly outweigh any good wording on those sites. So you shouldn't really have to worry about that too much, but you might want to test this maybe in a controlled environment to make sure it's working as you expect. Yeah, so that's the weighted listing. The other thing that I wanted to touch on was time-based bans. So in my case, I've implemented some time-based bans to restrict when certain sites can be visited. If we edit this file here, you'll see this isn't there by default. I added two includes for some new files I created. So you can see some information here about the time-limiting syntax. So if you, at the start of a file, include a line that has hashtag time, and then you define the start hour, start minutes, end hour, end minutes, and the days of the week indicated by these integer values, then you can select sort of frames of time as to which certain sites are banned. So in my case here, let's look at the first file and see what was in there. So we have a time block of midnight to 5 p.m. from every day of the week, Monday through to Sunday. That's the calendar representation of that. And these following sites should be blocked by that. So that's from, that's the first half. And then I made a second file that, actually, I modified that for a different example, but previously I had that at like 1930, so 7:30 p.m. till just before midnight. And in that case, I also banned the same sites. So I allowed a window of 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. for my kids to maybe use these sites. Not that they really do. They use YouTube. That's about it right now. Fortunately, social media is not a thing for them yet. So that's one way you can restrict certain viewing habits from taking place. Keep in mind, this is going to be bound to the clock on your server. So if you run date, in my case, I'm in UTC. So if I was to go to one of those sites right now, let's try YouTube, I should be blocked. Oops, sorry. YouTube. And we'll get a deny message, as we expected. So let's edit this. We will push up the second file's timeline. We'll go 23:30, so 11:30, which is beyond the current clock on the server. It restarts for us. It's nice. And we refresh our page there, and we're going to get a result. So that's sort of the time-based blocking. That's how you can implement that. You can do, obviously, if you have maybe different requirements, there's different sites you want to block at different times of the day, you can make multiple entries of this, like time band ABC series files, and then set different windows of time when certain things are allowed and denied. So it's quite flexible. The other thing to look at is maybe the actual access denied page itself. Maybe you want to change some of the behavior here. You don't want perhaps the reasoning being shown, or you don't want this acknowledge button, or link, sorry, to be shown. You can change that very easily. So if you go to, I believe it's user, share, E2Guardian, languages, UK English, which is what will be there by default, and then template, you can actually edit the template that is used to create the file. It's actually a fairly large file, so let's go down to the end. And if you come in here, you don't want to actually remove this stuff, because this would actually, for some reason, the way that it works, you will impact what you see in the logs by removing stuff here. So what I was doing, and what worked for me, was to add a p tag with a hidden argument, and just to wrap that around the this section here. That hides all the reasoning. And then for the link, I just, made a comment instead. And when I ran that, and I went back to my search and I refreshed, oh, sorry. It doesn't auto-restart for this file because it's not watching it. Let's restart the service. By the way, this is the iNotify Tools package. If you're interested in that, it's quite powerful. It can be used to do some cool scripting stuff. And there we go. There's our change. We no longer see a banned reason or anything like that. This is a search. So, but we still get all that same stuff included. We have the full URL. We have all the reasoning here. So we are able to still use this to do some filtering, or sorry, do some troubleshooting still if we get a complaint. Like I went to this and it didn't work. Why? What happened? Other things to note actually, but this log entry here is that this is the client IP address. It's listed twice, I guess, for whatever reason. So that's one thing to note there. And this, of course, this is the Unix timestamp, so you can see like when, from who, what was accessed, the request method, the result. This is the size of the results. I'm not sure what these fields are, unfortunately. And then, of course, the status of the result, if it was denied or not, and the score, if it was a weighted deny. So that's basically why. And then this is, I guess, some of the category information that you'll see as well. Oh yeah, one thing I did want to show was with the weighted phrase listing. So you can actually do more than one word at a time. So maybe your requirement is not just a single word. Maybe you want to have like something else that has to appear. You can comment limit this and put in, say, like, I don't know, boxcar or something. And then save that. And now if we do a similar search here, I believe we can see, let's do a search again on Google. Ah, yikes, sorry. So we'll go back to Google and we'll do a search for Callaloo. Now it should be allowed, which it is, but if we do Callaloo space boxcar and search, then we get denied because the same effect occurs. So we can see prior to that we had a normal search for this lovely cartoon, and it had a negative 437 score. And then after we did our change, after we searched for the additional string of boxcar, then we got a positive score of 947. So that changed, obviously, the result, and we got blocked. And we actually see in here this being matched. And this is sort of like giving you an idea of what words were influencing the behavior, I believe. So you can hopefully use this to like sort of identify what is being allowed and denied and why. It's a good idea again to look at this stuff. So take a moment and like review the contents of these files and see like what good words there are, and maybe like what bad words there are, so you can make a decision of what you want to adjust, if you do want to adjust on anything. And you can obviously do this for these other categories that I won't get into exactly, but maybe we can look at like sports for just maybe a quick example here, so you can see what they've decided as default strings to match in for sports and the weights that are involved. And so it's very configurable. You can decide as to what you want to do based on what you see here. So that's sort of it for this video on customizing and tuning E2Guardian to meet your needs. So if you liked what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please comment below if you have any questions about any of the content here, if you run into any difficulties, or if you have suggestions for anything you'd like to see in future videos. And in the next video, we'll be taking a look at augmenting our filtering process with the Pi-hole DNS blocking service. So stay tuned for that one. And yeah, I'll see you soon.